According to the Mental Health Commission of Canada, 75% of all suicides are men, and 66% of men believe that mental health is worse than it has ever been. Now, I know we talk a lot about women's health at What She Said, but that statistic stopped me cold this week. So it's appropriate that as we celebrate the amazing fathers in our lives this weekend, that we pause to recognize that they may also be struggling with their mental health and help break down the stigma. Popular Canadian television personality Bryan Baeumler joins me now to discuss why he has stepped into the role of mental health advocate, starting with the 5th annual Father's Day on the Hill event that happened in Ottawa this week. Welcome to What She Said, Bryan.
Thanks for having me.
So we're doing a little bit of what he said today. I think you might be
Okay.
the first man I've had on the show this year. So
Well,
this
I'm
is fantastic.
honored. I am honored.
It's great to have you here. What prompted you to step into this role? Was there a moment that you said, I really need to start speaking very openly about this?
It's interesting, a friend reached out to me, and this initiative was started by Matt Jeanroux, and it's a nonpartisan, event, Father's Day on the Hill. It's, like you said, the 5th anniversary. And I've had some conversations with friends over the years, and I had my own struggles with anxiety through my 20s and 30s. And believe it or not, the first 3 years of filming were 24-hour days, 7-day a week, anxiety, massive panic attacks for me, and suffered from agoraphobia. So I had a lot of experience with that side of it. And I noticed about a year ago, a friend of mine had sent me just an interesting, I don't know if it's a meme or a quote or what. And I reposted it because it kind of hit home with me. And I forget the exact context, but I was amazed at the number of people that reached out in the trades, these guys that, publicly and from a distance are these big, tough, burly, men don't cry, boys don't cry type guys who said, you know what, man, I've had a really rough year. And this is exactly what I needed to read, thank you. So that was interesting. I started to repost and put out a little bit more content like that. And just really notice the feedback. And again, mostly from these big, tough, burly guys that, aren't supposed to cry, aren't supposed to show any emotion, saying that they were really connecting with that kind of content, and that, they needed to hear these things, and they needed to hear that, there's people that are willing to listen, and they needed to know that it's okay not to be okay sometimes.
And do you think that I'm so happy to hear that men were reaching out to you about this, but do you think that that we're able to shift accordingly for men in today's society to let them share those emotions? Or do you think they're still sort of hiding behind that wall that, they've been conditioned to sit behind?
I think there's definitely, there's pressures, there's different pressures on all of us, men, women, kids, adults, older people. And I think it's a generational thing. I think it's it's a societal thing, depending on what society you grow up and how you're surrounded. And to be honest, whether you have a strong supportive father figure in your life or not. And it's interesting, the more I've thought about it, men's mental health doesn't only affect men, it affects the partners in their lives, the children, the women around them. Men's mental health issues can lead to crime, to substance abuse, to domestic violence and issues. And so it's such an important topic, not just for men, but for everybody to talk about. So it's it definitely, we should open the door and allow these conversations to happen. And I think most people, it takes, I'm 48 now. I've got 4 children, I've been busy with a career for a number of years. And I think it's an age related thing when that they say you have 2 lives, and the second one starts when you realize that you only have one. And I think that's, I realized, a year or 2 ago, I'm playing the back 9 now, that's where we are. And your focus starts to shift, and your perspective starts to shift, and you start to have different conversations that are really meaningful. And the last few years with the pandemic has been tough on everybody, and it's really brought this to the forefront. So I think it's a good thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that you have 4 children. You have sons, correct?
I have 2 sons and 2 daughters.
Now, has your mindset in terms of how you speak with your sons shifted now that you're sort of, as you said, sort of evolved into this new space of talking openly about mental health? Because I know that sometimes we parent genders a little bit differently when it comes to these things.
Yeah.
Has that changed for you at all?
I think with all of our children, we've always had very open and honest conversations with them. We have a unique situation where they've been surrounded by a film crew their entire lives. So they're surrounded by adults. They're involved in adult conversations. One of my sons was experiencing anxiety issues of his own, and I thought back to, I think I was 22 or 23 the first time, I realized something was strange. And the response that I got was, "Oh, that's weird. Go home, sleep it off, and you'll be fine." Pat on the back, kind of thing. And had somebody said to me at that moment, "Listen, here's what it is. Here's the science behind it. Here are the physiological reasons. Here are the ways to talk yourself out of this cycle of depression or anxiety." I think that probably would have cut about 15 years of my anxiety ride, off. But that didn't happen. So I definitely had those conversations with my son and said, "Look, I went through the same thing, and here it is." And interestingly enough, it not that shut it off and cured it, but I think he only dealt with it for maybe 6 months to a year. So maybe it's early intervention and talking about it and understanding it that's important. So we definitely have those conversations with the kids.
Bryan, I'd like to know, tell me about the experience of Father's Day on the Hill. I know you were a guest speaker, but there were others there, obviously. Was there anything that sort of surprised you about this event?
No, I think I went into it, just realizing what it would be. Great conversation, and I think a lot of people realizing that we need to talk more about these things and open it up. We're so busy today on the internet, on social media, pretending everything is okay. And men especially, you get that phone call, the text, or the slap on the back from a friend or a colleague, and they say, "How you doing?" And the programmed response is, "Oh, good, man. How are you?" We have to pause that programmed response, and there's a time and a place to say, "I'm good. How are you doing?" And there's a time and a place to say, "You know what, man, I've had a really rough couple of weeks. Would love to grab a coffee and talk about it." So I think it was a great conversation starter, and it's great to see so many people that are behind the initiative.
You mentioned social media, and we often share our highlight reel there, what we want people to see. Do you feel that the social media has an impact on men's mental health specifically?
100%. A lot of people out there, and I've realized this over the past 2 years. Being on television again, it's a unique experience. I think it's probably in line with being a politician. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody thinks you work for them. Everyone has expectations, and a lot of people will make comments, and the majority positive, which is great. But there are those ones that come across that are very negative and abusive and rude and all kinds of things. And my shift over the past few years, and again, I think this is getting older and looking at the kids and trying to teach them how to navigate, this new form of media going forward, is that those are the people that, instead of responding and saying, "Screw you," the response is, "Are you okay, man? Like, what's up?" Because there's a saying, interesting, what Susie says about Sally says more about Susie than it does about Sally. Well, it applies to, Bill and Tom as well. It typically that's coming from a place where those people are unhappy with themselves and they're projecting that, and in hopes that it makes them feel better, but ultimately it doesn't. So yeah, it's an interesting media, and I think it's really it's been detrimental for a lot of people.
And do you think that somebody like yourself, who's very much in the public eye, do you think you have a responsibility to share not just the highlight reel through your social media to show people that there is, it's not always perfect?
I don't know if it's again a responsibility. I feel a responsibility. I don't know that there is a some type of real responsibility there, but I think anyone that has that is in the public eye and has a following or a reach is should, from their own moral compass, look at getting involved in things that help other people. I was lucky. I was raised by two loving parents and a very supportive father who yeah, he dropped everything and came and stayed with me for 6 weeks during, kind of my high anxiety time, and got me through that. And I think it's really important that the message they kind of taught us was, if you have an extra sandwich and your neighbor is hungry, you should give them a sandwich. That's just basic human decency. So yeah, I think there is, or I think people should feel their own responsibility, to share these things and help other people out.
All right, incredible. So I want people to be able to find out more about Father's Day on the Hill, obviously, but also to keep up with you. You're very busy. So maybe you could just share where people can learn a little bit more about Father's Day on the Hill, and then, of course, keep up with all of your adventures.
I can't even keep up with those adventures. So Father's Day on the Hill, you can find information at fathersdayonthehill.ca. The website's got all kinds of information there. Myself, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Bryan Baeumler with a Y, and BryanBaeumler.com, and we have BaeumlerConstruction.com, and a quick search will track us down. But yeah, we have a lot going on between Bahamas and Florida and Canada and the West Coast, and more projects in the future.
Incredible. Bryan, thank you so much for joining me and for being the first man on the show this year. That was great.
That's what she said. I love it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Bryan.